everyone. So I hope you guys are doing well. As you can tell by the title, today's video is about my miscarriage and what I experienced, and I plan to also just touch on a little bit of how I actually conceived with PCOS. I hope this video helps someone who is going through, a miscarriage situation right now. Like, when I miscarried, I did watch other people's stories to kind of bring myself a little bit of comfort, because it's so easy to slip into that state where you feel like, you're the only person in the situation, like you're the only person it's happening to, and it's rough and it can be hard. And this video is pretty much just to remind anyone in a tough situation or in a tough place grieving a miscarriage that you are not alone. In fact, you are 1 in 4. It is common. I'm sure you've heard that from your doctors. And yeah, I hope that you find some peace soon in your situation. I know you'll never ever forget that baby, but yeah, I hope that you carry that baby in your heart, and you find some way to push forward with your life. So as you've seen in my previous videos, I have polycystic ovarian syndrome, and having PCOS gives me higher chances of actually having a miscarriage. And I knew that when I started my journey to try to conceive. My husband was aware of that, and yeah, we decided to push forward. So last year in November 2016, I was struggling after having a failed assisted fertility cycle with Clomid, and I wanted to give up. I had only completed like one cycle of Clomid that failed, and then the following cycle I wasn't able to use Clomid for that cycle because the cyst was way too large. And I kind of just hit a place where I was just tired. I was tired of trying. My husband and I had been trying to conceive for like a year and 2 months. I know like people have been trying to conceive for years and years and years, and after like a year and a couple months I was just over it. And I talked to my support person, which I explained in my last video, my trying to conceive journey so far. And she really encouraged me and pushed me to continue going, and she inspired me. She sent me some inspiration from someone else she knew who was struggling, or who had been struggling to conceive, and that helped me. And also I had just began reading The Alchemist, and this book changed my life. Like, I read this book and I took my time reading it. At the time I had the book for about 6 years. I had never read it before, and I decided to pick it up when I was in that rough place. And after reading this book, I took about 3 weeks to read it. I sat on it for a minute, and then I read again, and I thought about it, what each phase was meaning to me. And so after reading this book, I remember crying like crazy and praying, and I began thanking God for like all of my blessings. And because at that moment I felt like God provided me everything that I needed, and I wasn't being grateful for the things that I already had. I decided to fast, and once I decided to fast and go on to try for another cycle, I went in on my regular routine. I had to go within 1 to 3 days of my cycle starting to get an ultrasound to find out if I had any cysts or not, if I could even try for an assisted fertility cycle, and you know, all of that came back good. I was able to, my doctor said everything looked perfect. I talked to him and let him know that I was fasting at the time, and you know, was it okay for me to be fasting during the time that I was taking all this medication? And he said it was okay. I fasted for 2 weeks, and I prayed, and I went in, I got my, so I took my Clomid during my cycle, and then I took my 2 Gonal-F injections, and I believe I still have some of the footage. If I can get the footage, I'll put it in this video as well, so you can see like what I did. My sister.
Oh, I can't stick it. That was the thing. So you stick it, I push the stuff in, and you just hold.
Let's get your collagen on.
It's little. It's not bad. It didn't hurt last time. Girl, I won't be able to cope with that. I'll push the thing in there, but I can't do that. I can't even look at it. Just let me know when to start saying prayer first.
Just put it on in there. God damn, how much?
I'm trying to make sure I got it
Get
good.
out that monkey.
All right. Is it? No. Oh.
Ooh.
It's in. Come on, push it. Tell me when to stop. Push it. There you go. Ew.
Use that left hand. Ooh, you do it slow too. Goodness gracious.
Push it, friend. Move your finger. It's down here some. I think because I was squeezing it the last time.
And that's how you do it, ladies and gentlemen.
My sister and my husband helped me out with giving the injections, and I did the injections at home. And then afterwards, a few days later, we went to my doctor's office. He found out that I had 2 follicles, and like, we were so happy that my body responded to it at that point. And you know, I got my trigger shot, and I was sent home to baby dance. And you know, me and my husband, you know, were hopeful. You know, I had been praying, I had been eating healthier, and I had been fasting. So, you know, I felt really good about it, and I was in a really good place. They always tell you once you get a trigger shot that you shouldn't take a pregnancy test for 2 weeks because it will show up positive, and you don't want to get your hopes up for a false positive. So, you know, I was trying to hold out, but I couldn't wait. So I was like, you know, I'm gonna go ahead. I told my husband, you know, I'm gonna go ahead and test out my trigger shot, and I'm gonna, you know, take pregnancy tests to kind of see how it fades away. And I waited till I was about maybe 8 days past ovulation. Oh my God, I waited till I was about 8 days past ovulation, and I took a pregnancy test, and it was negative, or so I thought. So I had a habit at that point of taking the pregnancy test, and I had paper towels on my counter in my bathroom, and I would put them out with the day that it was taken, like which day of the cycle it was taken, and I would take them and put them out so that I can track my progression. Well, the next morning I got up for work like I normally do, 5 o'clock in the morning. I got up, and I don't know what made me, like, while I was washing my hands after using the restroom, you know, I looked down at that test and I was like, oh, it looks like it's a faint line. So I was like, man, like, it was like no lines there last night. Like, now it's this very, very faint line. And I was like, maybe it could be a positive. Maybe it's just still a little bit of that HCG from that trigger shot showing up in my system. So I was like freaking out a little bit, but then I was kind of calm. I was like, no. So I was like excited, but then I was like, no, I don't want to get my hopes up. You know, I'm not going to get my hopes up, because at that point I had been used to seeing negative so much that I had never seen a positive pregnancy test from my own urine at all. And so I sat in my closet and I did like a quick little video on my phone, like, oh my god, I'm freaking out. I remember seeing myself, like, eyes all like still kind of low from just waking up, and I was like, I think I'm pregnant, but I'm not sure. I had butterflies in my stomach. Like, all these emotions were running through me, right? So I went to work, and that morning I would sit there at my desk, and my boss would sit next to me all the time, and we would laugh and talk or whatever. And that morning, like, she was talking and I was talking, but I could not get that positive pregnancy test out of my mind. And so I turned to her and I just burst out with, I think I might be pregnant. I got a positive pregnancy test this morning, but I'm not sure if it's from the shot or if it's actually a real positive pregnancy test. And she froze, and she was excited because she knew that I was going through fertility treatments, and none of my coworkers knew except for one. My coworker who I work closely with, she knew, because I didn't want her to be caught off guard if I was a little bit irritable or whatever. So it was like our little secret. And my boss told me, you know, well, when we go on our lunch break later today, I'm gonna take you to Target and you're gonna take a pregnancy test. So I was like, okay. So I sat all day nervous, waiting for lunchtime. She took me to Target and I got a pregnancy test. I snuck it into work, and I was in the bathroom taking this pregnancy test at work, and then I was freaking out. I hid it in the bathroom because we had a big cabinet. So I hid it, and I came back, and it was popped, like it said pregnant. And so I was like, oh my god. So I went and got my boss, and I was like, oh my god, this is saying I'm pregnant. You know, I went home, I told my husband about it or whatever, but I told him, you know, I got a positive pregnancy test, and then he got excited, and I was like, but wait a minute, like, I don't think it's a real positive. I think it might be this shot showing up, and so I need to keep taking like the pregnancy test with the line on it to see if it gets darker, if I see if it gets lighter, like it starts to fade out. And I don't know, my husband was like, you're pregnant, like, I know it, I know you're pregnant. And I was like, no. And then he was like, but the last time you took the test around this time when you took that trigger shot, you know, the shot was out of your system, and it was real, like, it was really negative. And so I don't know, I was on a real emotional roller coaster for that whole week. My husband picked me up from work one day, and we stopped at Target in the mall, and while I was in Target, I felt like somebody lit a match to my body, and I was like, oh my god, I'm so hot. I was standing in line waiting to check out, and I just got so hot. I didn't think anything of it. Then, you know, I was like, oh, I'm so hungry. Like, I was just hungry out of nowhere. Like, I was just starving. Like, I hadn't eaten anything. And my husband stopped, and we got Philly cheesesteaks and stuff on the way home. And I remember getting home. Normally me and my husband sit down and eat together, and this day I just could not wait for him, and I stuffed that thing down my throat. I ate that Philly cheesesteak so fast, and it was like the best thing that I had ever tasted in my life. Like, it was so good. I crushed that Philly cheesesteak, and my dogs were like looking at me all strange and stuff. And I remember running to my husband, who was in the bathroom at the time. I was like, oh my God, that Philly cheesesteak was so good. Like, it was the best thing I ever tasted. Like, I was just going off about this Philly cheesesteak that I've had a million of. And my husband was like, all right. And so that Wednesday, I called my doctor and I let my doctor know, I'm sorry, I went ahead and tested early, and I've been taking pregnancy tests all week so far, and you know, it says that it's positive. And he was like, well, you know, it still could be the shot. I don't want to do a beta test until Friday. So I had to wait 2 days. Oh my God, that was the longest 2 days of my life. So I kept taking pregnancy tests at home. My sister was getting excited. My husband was getting excited. I was getting excited. Then I was like down, like, no, it could be the shot. And so the whole house was on this emotional roller coaster because of me. I think I have a picture of all of the pregnancy tests that I took. Like, I had so many pregnancy tests taken that week, and it was just crazy. And so that Friday came along and I had to go to work. So before I went into work, I stopped at the hospital to get my blood drawn so that I could have my beta levels checked. And I went on to work like any other day, and my doctor called me back at about 11 o'clock in the morning, and he was like, well, you're definitely pregnant. And that was like the most beautiful, I don't know, that was like the best message I had ever gotten in my entire life. Like, I was so happy, I was so relieved. Like, I felt like, you know, proud of myself, because I felt like, you know, my body can do it. Like, I had lost faith, and then I got back to having faith again. You know, I felt like, you know, this was God sent for me. Like, I prayed, I fasted, I talked to God, and here the tears are about to start coming. I talked to God, and you know, I prayed for it, and I asked God, you know, if this is for my husband and I, Lord, just, you know, like, if it's something for us, then it's for us, Lord. We'll, you know, we'll appreciate the blessing. Like, we'll love this child and stuff. And so for my doctor to call and, you know, confirm the pregnancy, I was just so happy. Like, I can't even express like how happy I was. It was just the best feeling, and I'll never forget that ever in my life. And I don't know, I remember jumping around in the rain that day outside of my job when he told me, and like, I couldn't control myself. And I wanted to surprise my husband, but he called me and was like, did you hear from the doctor yet? Did he confirm yet? And you know, I wanted to surprise him. So I was like, no, I haven't heard from him yet. And he was like, well, I'm going over to his office, because he worked at the same hospital. He's like, I'm gonna go to his office and find out. So I was like, no, don't do that. And I was like, he confirmed already, you ruined it. And he was so happy. He was so happy. And I don't know, we both were just over the moon with excitement and happiness. And I couldn't wait to like tell my mom and my mother-in-law, because neither of them have grandchildren, and you know, this was gonna be their first. And so my support person called me that week too, and she knew that I had been trying and stuff. And you know, I told her what I had been going through that week, how it had been an emotional roller coaster and stuff. And I told her, you know, my doctor confirmed the pregnancy and all that, and she was so happy, and she wanted to help me surprise my husband and stuff. And we went to the store, and she went and got me like my first gift for my baby or whatever, and it was so cute. In fact, let me go get it. So This is the same bag and everything. I kept it, and she bought me this little binky blanket, and it's so soft and it's so cute, and I just love this little thing. I don't mess with it often because it does bring up memories, but I appreciated her for this because she had faith, and she encouraged me, you know, that week, and she was like, I just know it, you're pregnant and stuff, and I was just back and forth on my emotional roller coaster. And yeah, so this was the first little gift that I got from my little baby. But yeah, so after I left work that day, my husband took me to Michael's because I like crafting and stuff, and I made these little boxes for my mother-in-law and my mom with little booties and a onesie and a diaper, and I think it had a pacifier. I'll try to include the picture of it because I took a picture of the boxes before I sent them off. And I wanted to get these boxes done, you know, so that they can get to them by Christmas. After, you know, I made the boxes and everything, I started noticing little things like I got really bloated, and I was really huge. I couldn't wear my pants, nothing was really comfortable, and I was going to Target because I started wearing a lot of leggings and stuff at that point because my bottoms were very uncomfortable for me because of the bloating, because my stomach had gotten so large so fast. At that time, you know, I kind of started getting on Google, and then I was like, well, I started having like lower back pain, and I was like, well, I don't want to have a UTI or, you know, a kidney infection or something going on, so let me go to the emergency room and find out what's going on, what's happening. And so it was like 3 o'clock in the morning. I had not been to sleep. I couldn't sleep, and I told my husband, I'm getting up, I'm going to the emergency room, I'll be back. He was like, wait a minute, I'll go with you. And I was like, no, you go to sleep, I just need to go, you know, it's my own little crazy, let me go to the hospital and, you know, let me make sure everything is okay, and then I'll be back. And so I went to the emergency room, and they, you know, did a urine sample and told me, you know, you don't have a UTI or anything, so you don't have a kidney infection, so let's do an ultrasound. So I got an ultrasound done, and the doctor came back and she asked me if this was a planned pregnancy. And so, you know, that kind of caught me off guard, and I was like, well, yeah. And she asked me, did I use fertility drugs or anything? And I told her, yeah, I took Clomid and Gonal-F injections and an HCG trigger shot. And, you know, she was like, well, you know, you need to call your doctor because you have a cyst the size of your hand, and you know, we need to make sure that you don't have a tubal pregnancy going on. And that freaked me out. So I immediately started calling my husband and my sister to wake them up because, you know, I was at the hospital by myself, and I had been there for a while, and so I was, you know, freaking out, and I was like, you know, I need you to come up here, I gotta go to the doctor or whatever. You know, they're telling me that I have a cyst the size of my hand on my right ovary, and, you know, it may be an ectopic pregnancy. And so, you know, all of us immediately were worried and afraid. She told us to relax, and she called my doctor that morning and let him know that I was in the emergency room and what was going on. So once I was discharged from the emergency room, I rested and tried to relax at home. I tried to continue on with my day. I did take out for work because I was freaked out and I was waiting to hear back from my doctor, and there was just so much going on. I stayed home to rest my body and relax some, and I don't know, all of a sudden I started having like really bad pain, and it woke me up out of my sleep. And so I went back to the emergency room because it hurt me so bad. Like my pelvis was hurting, my back was hurting, I couldn't bend, I couldn't sit, like I couldn't, like everything was just so uncomfortable. So I went to the emergency room. I told them I was in all this pain. They couldn't figure out what was going on with me, so they sent me up to the lab to get an ultrasound done, the transvaginal ultrasound, and they put me on morphine because I was in so much pain. And I thought the cyst was rupturing, but they wanted to check and make sure it wasn't rupturing or it wasn't causing my ovary to twist and all this stuff. When they were doing the ultrasound, you know, I was out of it, but I was alert. And the lady did the ultrasound, and I was like, I know, you know, I'm not supposed to ask you, but can you just tell me if you saw my baby in my uterus, or is this an ectopic pregnancy? And she was like, oh no, I saw your baby in your uterus. And I was just so relieved. And she turned the camera, the screen, the monitor, so that my husband and I could see, because my husband was with me. And we saw our tiny little baby like sitting there, just, oh, it was like the best feeling to just, I was like, okay, my baby is where it needs to be. I can push through whatever this pain is. Like, I'm gonna figure this out. Like, we're gonna figure it out. As long as my baby is where it should be and it's not an ectopic pregnancy, that's all I needed to hear. They never could tell me like what was going on. They did do like kind of like a pap smear to make sure my cervix was closed. Everything looked fine, so they released me to go home. Once I went home, I took, you know, some more Tylenol, and I just relaxed. And over time, like, the pain did go away. On New Year's Eve, I went to the bathroom, and then I noticed like a little bit of brown on my tissue when I wiped after the restroom. And you know, I was like, oh, well, that's strange. You know, I haven't seen that one before. And it wasn't a lot. It was just a very small amount, like a dot almost. And I was like, you know, I feel fine. You know, I don't feel any different. I'm not having any cramping or nothing. You know, I still had, you know, tender, sensitive breasts. And I was just like, well, maybe, you know, it's from like my uterus, you know, spreading, like that old blood, you know, being pushed out. And all. That's what I chucked it up to. And you know, I put it in the back of my mind, and I went on to spend time with family, nice and relaxed, chill evening. And the next day, I went to the bathroom. I didn't see anything until later in the day when I noticed more brown spotting, and I was like, well, that's strange. The 4th of January, I already knew that I had an ultrasound scheduled for a follow-up from my emergency room visit like a couple weeks before. And so, you know, I decided to just wait till then. And then that Monday, I saw more brown, you know, coming out. And this time it was a lot more, and there wasn't any blood. It was just brown discharge coming out. And sorry if this is TMI. I saw a brown discharge, and I called the nurse's line to get their opinion about it. And the nurse that I spoke to told me that everything sounded okay. You know, I didn't have any cramping. I wasn't in any pain. You know, it's common in some pregnancies to have a little bit of brown discharge in the beginning of the pregnancy, and that I was fine to just wait until, you know, my ultrasound that was coming up in a couple days. So that's what I did. But of course, I got on Google and I Googled things, and then I got scared because I read about miscarriages and stuff, and then I, you know, didn't want to hear about it at all, so I left it alone. And on the morning of January 4th, I went to my doctor's appointment for my ultrasound to follow up on the cyst. I went in, I was so nervous. I was frustrated with my husband and my sister because I felt like they were taking too long, so I was really irritable. And, you know, they were in the room with me or whatever, because I knew that if I got bad news, I was going to need them. And I kind of prepared myself in that moment for bad news. And, you know, the doctor came in. They came with their ultrasound little thing. and they did the vaginal ultrasound. And as soon as she inserted the ultrasound and got it in the right position, like it was almost immediately she saw my baby's heartbeat. And when she said, you know, oh, everything is okay, and I'm about to cry again, I was like, oh my God, like I was so relieved. Like it felt like an elephant had just gotten up from sitting on my chest. And she turned the monitor around so that I could see the heartbeat, and she turned it on so we could hear it. And my husband jumped up and he was excited. He started kissing me, but I just couldn't, I don't remember what else was going on. I was just looking at that monitor, and I could just see like the little flicker of the heart. It was just, oh my God, the best feeling ever, the best sound ever. I can't even describe like how I felt hearing, you know, my baby's heartbeat. And it was like, it was amazing. And I was so happy and so relieved. So they did give me a picture, and I had already purchased this pregnancy journal to like keep myself busy and document and all that stuff. They did give me like my first ultrasound picture of my little baby. So here's my picture here. It's really small on this one, but it was so much bigger like on the screen. And I don't remember what the measurements were once at this point. Let me see. Okay, so on this picture, it says that I was measuring at 5 weeks and 6 days. But at that point, I know that I was already past my 6-week mark, and they told me that, you know, it was normal or whatever. Things could change. The heartbeat sounded good, and so I had nothing. Well, you know, just go home and relax. They told me to expect some bleeding from the ultrasound, being a vaginal ultrasound that was normal, and not to worry about it. If I experienced any pain, or if I experienced like heavy bleeding, like feeling a pad, that I should, you know, come back to the hospital. Later that day, I experienced some bleeding. So I said, well, they said it's normal. You know, I was in a good mood. I saw my baby. I saw my baby's heartbeat. I heard my baby's heartbeat. I was like so happy. I let my family, my mom know that everything was good, and we heard the heartbeat and everything was okay. And the next day, I started experiencing more bleeding. And I talked to my doctor about it and told him that I was experiencing some cramping too, but it wasn't too bad at that time. So he told me, you know, we'll try to get some rest. If you feel a pad, then definitely come in. If it's a bright red blood, definitely come into the emergency room. But I'll go ahead and schedule you an appointment for tomorrow so that we can check on things or whatever if they get worse. And so the 6th rolled around, you know, I had to go in for this appointment. You know, the bleeding kept going. I hadn't really felt a pad or anything, but it was still a lot more bleeding, more bleeding than I was comfortable with at that point. And when I went into that appointment, I prayed, I was calm. And, you know, I tried, the nurse was there, you know, talking to me, trying to keep my mind occupied. My husband was with me, and he was nervous, and I was nervous. And, you know, we were just going in hoping that everything would be okay. And my doctor did the ultrasound, and he was like, I'm sorry, there's no heartbeat. And I remember hearing my husband like sigh in the background, like he was sitting behind me. And I don't know, I remember trying to like process what he had just told me, and immediately afterward, like after a couple seconds, like I just broke down crying because I just could not believe it. I felt like, you know, I prayed so hard for this baby, and I went through so much to get to this point, and it's just ripped from me. Like, I just felt like somebody just literally snatched my heart, and I don't know, I just felt like I was in like a trance, like I was in the sunken place. Like I just could not fathom what I was about to have to go through, and I was just really upset. And you know, my doctor gave my husband and I a second, and you know, we sat there and I cried. I don't even remember if my husband cried in that moment, just because I was so emotional. Like I was so emotional, and it was hard for me. It was hard for me to grasp what was going on. Like, he came back and, you know, he told me my options, you know, if I wanted to get DNC or if I wanted to take, I forgot the name of the pill. I'll try to link it down below, but it's the abortion pill to help my body remove, because the baby was still in the sac and it was just sitting there. My body wasn't like rejecting it at all, and that sucked because here I am with carrying this baby with no heartbeat, and it's, you know, it's still inside of me, and I don't want to let go, and I didn't want to let go, but I knew it had to come out, and I didn't want to hold on to it. It was just so much emotions going on at that time. Was so many emotions going on at that time. I could not get myself together. I'm sorry. I couldn't get myself together. I just had so much going on. I was conflicted so much. So originally I did opt to get the DNC done because I was like, let's just get it over with. I just want to start the process to move forward. I cannot continue on holding this baby here lifeless. And my doctor thought that taking the pill would be the better option for me, because I had never had a surgery or anything before, and you know, I didn't want to, but him and my husband, you know, kind of talked me into it, and I went for it. And once I went home, you know, he told me that I would have to insert these pills vaginally and that I would experience some cramping, and you know, he kind of prepared me for what to expect or whatever. And he said if it didn't work, I had to come back the following week, because it was on a Friday when I found out. He told me I had to come back the following week so that he could do the ultrasound and make sure everything, you know, kind of expelled itself. And if not, I would have to get the DNC. And we went home. My husband and I, neither one of us knew what we should feel, what we should do, what we should do next. And so pretty much we didn't know how to grieve, you know. And my husband, you know, his concern was me, of course, and how he was gonna support me. And at that time, you know, I thought about my husband and how he was feeling, but I was really consumed with my own feelings and emotions and stuff, and it was really hard for me to like really just sit down and just carry all that I was just given. And it was just a lot. I can't even, that's the best way that I can explain what I went through. And so me and my husband immediately, like before we went home, we went to Barnes and Noble and looked for books on grieving, and I couldn't find anything that I could relate to there. So I then started looking up like grieving miscarriages and stuff on Google, and I found blogs and stuff, and I found one in particular that had a long list of books that you could read to help you through the grieving process. And the first one that I ordered from Amazon was Empty Arms, and this one was very helpful to me to hear someone else's story, because I did go into that place where I felt like I was alone, and this book really you know, helped me. The next book was Grieving the Child That I Never Knew. This book was really helpful for me as well. It gives you steps to go through like daily to get you to that place of peace. And it's also a lot of scriptures in here that help to get you through, you know, certain things like Mother's Day and like your due date. And that's another thing, like the reason I'm doing this too is because my due date is coming on this coming Sunday, August 27th. And this is kind of like my last way of kind of moving forward from this phase in my life. And yeah, so this book has a scripture for pretty much all of those tough days that you may go through after losing a child. So after I ordered the books to help my husband and I grieve, I notified my boss and let her know what happened. And I was already on vacation, but I had a doctor's note for an extra 2 weeks off, and I took those entire 2 weeks off, and I then went home to prepare myself for what was to come with the pills that would, you know, help my body, you know, expel the sac. I struggled over that weekend. I had a friend who had experienced a couple of miscarriages, and she reached out to me and informed me on like what her experience was. She first asked me if I wanted to know what her experience was or whatever, so that I could help prepare myself even more, you know. And I really appreciated that from her. It really helped me out a lot. My husband was the most amazing person through the entire process. He was so strong for me, and he literally got me through, because I couldn't imagine having to go through something like that alone. And yeah, he really, like, I couldn't have asked for a better person to go through something like that with, like a better support person, because my husband is literally my rock, and he held everything down, and I appreciate him so much for that. So when the time came for me to insert the pills vaginally, I had another meltdown, and I could not do it. My husband, you know, told me he would hold my hand like every time I went to the restroom. He literally held my hand as I went to the restroom, and he sat on the tub literally, and he was with me through the entire process. And when it was time to take the pills, I couldn't do it. He, you know, told me, you know, we have to do this or whatever. I know it's hard for you. So he, you know, did it for me, and I was so vulnerable in that moment. I just couldn't bring myself to take the abortion pill after all that I had went through to actually conceive. And then now I'm, you know, getting rid of, I kind of had like a sense of guilt about it, and I felt like, you know, if it was supposed to come out, it would come out, it'll come out in its own time. But I also didn't want it to just be in there either. And so I struggled, and my husband, you know, told, you know, this is what we need to do, let's just go ahead and move forward with this. You know, try to relax, I got you, we'll handle it. And you know, my husband inserted those pills for me, and you know, I laid there. He set up me a little station on the side of the bed so that I wouldn't have to get up for anything. He cooked for me, like he walked the dogs, and I didn't have to do anything. Literally, I stayed in bed, and you know, I just pretty much waited for cramping or whatever to happen. And there was a lot of pain. My body was now trying to work this sac out of my uterus, and you know, I just, you know, I took some pain pills, and I just tried to sleep everything away. Well, that whole weekend my husband gave me my pills as my doctor directed me to take them. And that Monday, the sac was still in there. So I found out on Friday that there was no longer a heartbeat. I took my pills to help my body expel what was left, and it didn't work. So Monday we went to the doctor. I, you know, got an ultrasound done. The doctor saw the sac still there in my uterus, and he scheduled me a D&C for Tuesday, the next day. So I was frustrated and tired of the whole thing. When I went home that Monday, I prayed. I locked myself in my room, and I prayed and I prayed and I prayed so hard, and I asked God for strength to just get me through, because you know, I was afraid. I've never had surgery before. I know it's something that's common, but you know, I didn't want to have to get it done, and I still couldn't believe that I was even going through it. So you know, I prayed and I cried, and I prayed and I cried. And on Tuesday morning, when I got up Tuesday morning to get myself ready to, you know, go in for my D&C, I went to the bathroom. And when I went to the bathroom, it was the first time I had really gone alone. And I felt, you know, something, and I was just like, oh, you know, that felt different. It, you know, it felt larger than normal, you know, coming out of me. And you know, I said something to my husband, but I still went on to the hospital. Once I got to the hospital and went through the pre-op stuff, they had, while they were doing my IVs and stuff, I mentioned to them, you know, what I felt that morning. And the doctors then told me, you know, well, we'll check things out before we, you know, do the surgery or whatever. And so, you know, they did the ultrasound right there, and they said that they didn't see anything, and that it probably was what passed, you know, that morning. And so, you know, I had a sense of relief. And I don't know, one of the doctors like immediately was like, well, you know, if you want to go ahead and try to conceive, you know, continue on, you can go on like this is a normal cycle. And it just kind of like rubbed me the wrong way. It pissed me off too, because I'm just like, you know, I'm trying to get past what just happened to me, and I don't even know you. And the first thing you say to me is, well, now you can go on and try for another one. And it felt just so dismissive of the one that I had just lost. And I was just like, you know, well, I'm not there yet. I'm still processing what happened to me. And so, yeah, I'm just gonna take a break right now and let me get over this first. And I left the hospital, and it was hard for me too, because I knew that I would have to go back to work after a while, and I worked at a daycare, and that made it even harder to go back to work with kids. I didn't work with them directly. It was just I worked in a child care setting with children and pregnant parents and stuff, and it just made it so much harder for me, to think about going back to work. So once we got home, I went and took me a nap, and I relaxed, and my husband, knew that I was tired. I went moping, I was crying, I was just so emotional, as expected. And my husband, being the most amazing person that he is, he's like, you need some fresh air, and I know just the place to take you to. Like, I know the freshest air that we can get in the country, and that is Seattle. He was stationed in Bremerton, Washington once upon a time, and he immediately went online and booked us a flight. He booked us a flight that night, and we got on the plane and we flew to Seattle like that night. And that was the best thing for me at that time. I just felt like I was going through so much, and my mind was going so much, and I just couldn't get a good hold on my emotions. And I felt like life was just spiraling out of control, and I just couldn't get a hold of anything. And that trip really made a world of difference. Like, I went to Seattle, and I kind of felt like I got to escape what I was going through. And so I feel like I got to escape what I was going through, and it was a nice kind of partial distraction from my reality. We went up to Vancouver, and I loved it, and I enjoyed my trip, and I fell in love with Seattle and Vancouver, and I would love to live there one day. But I don't know, my husband is just amazing for that. Like, my mind was just on curling up in the bed and just not dealing with the world, and my husband got me out of my funk and kept me moving, and he didn't let me just sink too far. And I really, really, really do appreciate him for that, because after I did start talking to people, a couple of people who knew, I got some of those responses where it was, oh, well, at least now you can do it, or you can go ahead and try for another one. And I was just like, I don't know, those things aren't things you should say to someone who has just lost a child, especially if it's a child that they really, really wanted. It's hard to hear people be so dismissive of the child you just lost. And if you don't know what to say to somebody who has recently experienced a miscarriage, please please don't say those things, because it's so insensitive, and it doesn't feel good to hear you say stuff like that. It doesn't. I just don't like it. There's a website called well, I'll leave links down below. There's a website called shop.drjessicazucker.com. She has an Instagram page called IHadAMiscarriage, and she's amazing. But if you don't know what to say to someone who has had a miscarriage, she has cards and stuff on her shop that has the most perfect messages for you to give to someone who's had a miscarriage. So if you don't have the words, or you don't know what to say, or you don't know what's right, please go and buy one of her cards, because I, recently found out someone that I know had a miscarriage, and I bought one of those, and it was appreciated because even though I experienced the same thing, I didn't really have the words to say. Like, everybody's experience is different, and I didn't really know what to say to bring that person comfort. And so that website was very helpful in conveying a message that I felt was appropriate for that situation. After, I returned from Seattle, I just me and my husband both just spent more time with each other. We worked on healing, and we prayed, and we talked, and we laughed, and we cried, and we geared ourselves up to return back to work. Before I returned to work, my boss knew that I had just lost my child, but there was one of my coworkers who had just informed her that she had just found out that she was pregnant. And my boss, oh Betsy, I miss her, she wanted to go ahead and let me know. She wanted to go ahead and let me know before I got back to work, so that I wouldn't be completely caught off guard, and I can kind of get a hold of my emotions. And I appreciate her for that, because I kind of got a chance to kind of get a head start on handling what I was feeling, because I didn't, I didn't want to be mad at my coworker, because that was, it's amazing. I know the place that she was in and how happy she was, and it's amazing to actually conceive, and she was happy, and I didn't want to put a damper on her happiness, and I didn't want to treat her any different. I wanted to celebrate her like I wanted to be celebrated. I wanted my people to celebrate with me when I found out I was pregnant too. And so when I got back to work, and that person mentioned that she was pregnant and stuff, it took a lot out of me to keep a straight face and keep myself together. But as soon as I got in my car after work that first day, I broke down. Like, I had the hardest time, and I struggled, and I'm not mad at her now. I'm really happy for her, and I see her pictures on Facebook, and I'm like getting excited because I want to see her baby. And I just think about last year, around this time, how different things were for the both of us. And yeah, like I like to see her growth. I'm in a good place now, but it took a while to get here. It has been very up and very, like, I've had good days, I've had bad days, I've had emotional days. Like, it's been a real struggle. I thought I was good when Mother's Day rolled around, and I was not. I went to church, and they had a segment for expectant mothers to come up to the front of the church, and I had to get up and leave because I just couldn't get myself together. It was a lot. It has been a lot, and I thank God that I have gotten through it. I thank God that He has brought me through the storm. It is a new day. I am happy. I have accepted what has happened, and I have, I will never forget about that baby. That baby will always have a piece of my heart. I'll always be able to hear that heartbeat. I'll always have that visual from the ultrasound. Like, I'll always have that. And if I had to be grateful for anything, I'm grateful for the pregnancy in general, but I'm also grateful for those little things, like having the chance to hear heartbeat, and having the chance to you know, see my baby, because I know a lot of people that early don't get a chance to experience any of that, and so I'm grateful for that. Yeah, now I found like a little Instagram and online community to help me get through and to continue to push through when days may get rough from, you know, here on out. My husband and I have decided that we will continue to try to conceive, and he has my back and I have his, and it is currently Thursday, August 24th, my anniversary. My husband is deployed, and you know, all summer long I've been dreading this upcoming Sunday, August 27th, which is what would have been my due date. I'm no longer allowing that date to hold me like hostage. I'm releasing all of my worry. I'm no longer gonna worry about it. I'm making a conscious decision here and now to move forward and continue to accept it. And so that's it for this video, guys. I hope this video helps someone who may be thinking that they're alone in their situation, or that they're alone. You are not alone. Miscarriage is common, unfortunately, and you know, it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be hard. It has been so hard for me. I've been struggling, but you know, there is light at the end of the tunnel. I have hope. My husband has hope. You know, we pray. If you pray, do that. You know, just stay hopeful in all that you do, because you know, it will get better. I know it may not seem like it right now if it's fresh for you, but you know, it will get better, and you know, you'll see this thing through. So comment down below if you have any other questions for me, and make sure you click that subscribe button to follow my fertility journey, because my husband and I will be continuing our journey, and we are prayerful and hopeful that things will lead to our little baby in 2018. So I hope to see you guys in the next video. Bye.